We have hit episode 100 of The Connors. Pretty hard to believe. We are in season 6 now, and we are 100 episodes in just with this iteration of the show. And this is a pretty standard episode, really. They're not pulling out all the bells and whistles. In fact, all of the cast is not even present for this episode. But let's talk about Smash and Grab and Happy Death Day. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my review for the latest episode of The Connors, number 100. This is a milestone that not a lot of shows get to reach, certainly these days, in the years of streaming, where most seasons only get 10 episodes at most, maybe 13 if it's a really popular show. But on networks, we still see some longer seasons, but even that, has been shrunk down from, the 80s, the 90s, and more recently. So it's pretty impressive for any show these days to reach 100. But this means that in total, with this family, when you include the original run of Roseanne, season 10 of Roseanne, and now The Connors, there are 331 episodes total with this family. I mean, that's crazy. Back in the day in the 50s and 60s, sure, you had like 39 episode seasons. So a show could run 2 years and have 70 some episodes. Okay. But, even in the 80s and 90s, yeah, we had, maybe 24, 26 episode seasons. Now, if you even get 20 episodes in a season, that's impressive. And with the strike that happened in the fall, I'm not even sure how many episodes we're supposed to get of this season. I know there's at least 10 listed so far. I don't know if we're going to get a full 13 from this season, but in any event, it is very, very rare for a show to have that many episodes. So, but it's interesting. This is just a standard episode. There's nothing particularly special about it. In fact, we are missing two of the core cast members. Mark and Ben are both absent from this episode. Mark, I don't even think is mentioned, but Ben, it's talked about he is at a hardware conference looking for some new higher priced items to sort of offset some of the store's costs. And we only see Harris really briefly. This is mainly an OG Connors family episode with Dan, Jackie, Becky, and Darlene, and there is a lot to do with Becky's daughter Beverly Rose as well. But for the most part, I mean, that's the core cast that is in this episode. So, all right, we're going to talk about it here in just a second. First, though, let me welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. If you are new to the channel, we do Connors reviews every single week that there is a new episode. So there are over 100 episode reviews now between Roseanne season 10 and the Connors. So pretty cool. A lot of stuff to check out there. And they're all in playlists, too. So if you go to the playlist section of my channel, you can check out all the different seasons there, including the season-by-season reviews of the original show from the 90s that I did during Roseanne season 10. So always a lot to check out here on the channel. But not just Connors content. We do other stuff here, too. A lot of movie and TV stuff. All right. So let's talk about this episode here. Smash and Grab and Happy Death Day. So this was directed by someone I'm not really familiar with, Michael Arden. I'm not sure if he's definitely not been on this season so far, if he's done ones in the past. And then the writer that got the credit for this one, Cindy Caponera, who I also am unfamiliar with. So interesting that, to me, 100th episode, that's like a big deal. That's a milestone. And some shows pull out all the stops. This one did not. So it just is kind of a regular episode. Down to being directed and written by people that, we're not super familiar with. But we'll start here with topic A from the title, which is Smash and Grab. So in the beginning of the episode, Dan is already lamenting about the hardware store's troubles, and that's why Ben is at this conference to get more, expensive items. They talk, about a toilet that can call 911 for you if it senses a problem, and all of these sort of interesting electronic new age kind of gadgets that they're kind of joking about. And then Jackie brings him a sandwich at the hardware store, and while they both are there, these kids come in and do, some smash and grab stuff, try to rob the store. They do catch one of them and zip tie her and try and figure out what her deal is. But, Dan calls the cops, and it sort of goes from there. They said there's not much they can do about it because it's pretty low priority for the cops with all the other major crimes out there. So they're a little disappointed, but hey, let's try and get some information out of this girl, see if we can find out who the ringleader is, this and that. They decide to do good cop, bad cop, but Dan gets a little confused because he's supposed to be good cop, and right away just kind of launches into a tirade on this girl. And listen, rightfully so. I mean, look, mom and pop stores like this are uh, a dying breed, really. We don't have many left, and I guess there's more in this type of a small town like Lanford. Like I live in kind of a suburb. Here I'm outside of Harrisburg, which is not Philly or Pittsburgh, but it's the state capital, so there's a lot of stuff kind of hustling and bustling here in the surrounding area. But there's a lot of really small towns around here that do still have a lot of mom and pop stores. Maybe the nearest Walmart or Target is like 20 miles away, or whatever. So I'm definitely surrounded by towns that have a lot of these mom and pop shops left. So in a town like Lanford, sure, but at the same time, there's still big box stores everywhere. Whether it's just your local grocery store selling, a lot of things that, drugstores or hardware stores used to sell, that kind of thing. So I get it. And they talk about how, the girl's like, oh, well, won't your insurance cover this? And Dan's like, we don't have that kind of insurance. We're really small. Like, how dare you, kind of thing. And Jackie's like, why would you even rob a small hardware store? Who cares, kind of thing. And she's like, oh, well, we were just trying to steal crowbars to get into the real stores. All right, that was a funny line. But in the end, Jackie ends up letting this girl go after talking to her, because she's like, oh, she's just like me when I was her age, just trying to get approval from a boy. That's the only reason she did this. There's no reason for her to be in trouble, this and that and the other thing. Boy, I don't know. I mean, it's not her store, so I guess she probably doesn't care as much. I think Ben will care when he comes home from the conference and finds out that they did catch one of them, and then Jackie let her go. But all right, whatever. But it led to this really, really great emotional moment of the show. This episode, I will give credit for this one, even though it's not a particularly, groundbreaking 100th episode kind of thing. I will say that both of these storylines have really, really emotionally resonating moments, whatever. And this ends in Jackie basically saying, look, when I was her age, I was always trying to get approval from, boys around town, this and that. As I grew older, I was trying to get approval from my father. And then once my father passed, then she kind of stops, and Dan's like, well, what were you doing after your father passed? It's you, Dan. I was trying to get approval from you because God knows my mother wasn't going to give me a kind word. Roseanne, just barbed at me. I was looking for approval from you. And, look, this is, I love the dynamic that they have given us in these last couple of seasons between Dan and Jackie, because there was a whole thing like, I don't know, Dan's actually... Okay, John Goodman is like the beating heart of this show, right? All of the characters kind of, revolve around him in some way. And, when you think back, I mean, Dan Connor is, to me, easily one of the top TV dads of all time. I think he resonated with a lot of people in terms of like, oh, wow, I wish my dad was like that, or whatever. And I think that the last couple of seasons, they've really connected him in special ways with a lot of these different characters with emotional moments. Now, earlier this season, we did have a moment with him and Grandma Bev that I thought was a little bit odd because, he was like, oh, I know you never liked me and this and that. And I never really got that sense. And I talked about this on my review, so I don't need to dwell on that more. But when that episode came up, I was like, I don't remember them ever like hating each other necessarily. But anyway, Jackie and Dan have certainly gone back and forth over the years. Some of the great lines of the original Roseanne, are about him, kind of barbing at her for, coming over all the time unannounced and, stealing their food and this and that and the other thing. One of my favorite lines from the early days of Roseanne, is when she comes in for breakfast and Dan goes, well, yes, it is the most important mooch of the day. That was a funny line, but yeah, that kind of was their dynamic, and so, yeah, they had some tender moments. I mean, certainly in the early days, when he found out that her boyfriend was abusive to her, he went over and beat the hell out of him, and spent some time in jail because of that. So yeah, I mean, he's always been a protective older brother, I think, but maybe not to the extent that she wanted. Maybe his barbs got to her a little more than she would have liked to let on, and I can definitely relate to that. I can roll with the punches, with a good joke or whatever, but when it's constant, yeah, it beats you down a little bit, and you start to wonder, okay, they're not really joking anymore. At this point, this is kind of how they really feel. But I thought that was a really, really nice emotional ending to the smash and grab thing. I don't know if that's gonna come up later in another episode. If Ben's gonna come back and be like, oh, what the hell, or what, or if they're gonna, be putting the pieces back together in the next episode or whatever. But for that, kind of slight storyline of the smash and grab, I really do think it had a nice emotional, core at the end. Now, we get to the other theme of the day, which is the happy death day part. So it is Beverly Rose's birthday, and Becky is really struggling to buy her any kind of decent present. And Darlene's like, she's not going to know the difference. She's a kid. Just give her some crap. But Becky makes a great point, and I guess it's fine they didn't dwell on it, but I think it is a very poignant kind of moment where Becky says, no, look, she's going to these birthday parties for kids now at, rich people's houses and more well-off people's houses anyway. And so she sees all these, amazing presents that people are getting. And look, I can relate to that. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. Luckily, none of my friends really did either. So I don't think we quite had that, aspect of it. But yeah, I mean, usually for birthdays, we would get like one fairly, decent gift. And then maybe a couple of little gifts, but that was about it. I mean, birthdays were not, in my family, a huge deal. And I think part of that is, now that I'm looking back, is probably because we really didn't have a lot of money. And so that's how it sort of shook out. We would always have a cake, certainly. And, my grandparents had some money and they would always help out a little bit. But yeah, so I totally get that. And I used to, when I worked years ago at a movie theater, I would run the birthday parties there, and I would see that sort of, class divide, I guess, with, people having more expensive gifts, at the table or whatever. And it turned into the last maybe couple of years I was doing the birthday parties. A lot of times they wouldn't even open the gifts at the party. And that seemed odd to me, but then somebody explained it to me. Oh, well, you don't want somebody that maybe brought a lesser gift to be embarrassed, or whatever. And I thought, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. It's not, look, I don't have kids. I have nephews, but I haven't been to a ton of their birthday parties. So it's not something I had ever considered, but that actually makes a lot of sense. So for Becky to be going through this, I think it's a very, very relatable issue for people. And so they decide to do a scavenger hunt instead, and make it more of a game than, okay, here's a really nice present. No, instead we're going to give you a lot of like maybe little presents, but you have to go find them. It's a fun game. And they talk about how they used to do that. Dan and Roseanne used to do that with their kids. So, so that was pretty cool. That's a cool concept. I like that a lot. But what that turned into was Beverly Rose finding this old box of family photos from like generations ago. And that wasn't meant as part of the scavenger hunt, but she found it. And so then we start talking about, okay, the legacy of these people, who are even these people, and Darlene and Becky were sort of clueless. They didn't know who they were. And so then it turned into this, okay, we have to explain what death is to Beverly Rose. And, because she was born after Roseanne had passed. So we haven't really had any death in her life yet. So we have to explain now to her, what is death? And it brought up a lot of emotional things for Becky because of her, ex-husband, well, her widowed, whatever you call it. They were still married when he passed, but yeah, Mark has, died obviously, and the actor in real life passed away years ago, so makes sense that they would incorporate that into the moment. And so yeah, so now we're teaching her about that, and then Darlene and Becky have kind of a moment about how hard it is for Becky to even talk about death, and that's why Mom's funeral hit me, even probably twice as hard or whatever, because I was really thinking about Mark and all of this, and of course, her husband died so young. I mean, probably, well, the actor died in his mid 30s, I guess, but I'm not sure when exactly in the lore of this show Mark died. We just know it was between the ending of the original Roseanne and then Roseanne season 10. But in any event, she's still suffering that loss. You never really get over that, right? So then we have to explain to Beverly Rose, okay, who all these other people are, because they shall not be forgotten. But of course, Becky and Darlene don't know, so they just make a bunch of stuff up. I think it might have been nice to maybe talk to Dan about them, and maybe he would know something about them. But no, instead they went for the laugh, and okay, let's just make up who these people are. But look, that's something I've gone through myself. Like I said, I don't have kids. I probably never will. I don't know. But I do wonder, what in 2 generations from now, is anyone even going to remember that I existed? I don't know. And who knows in 40 years, what the state of YouTube will be, like, will these videos even exist? I don't know. So it definitely is something that I have thought about. Certainly, legacies and past generations not being remembered, kind of thing. So I think even though this was a sort of standard episode, like I keep saying, for the 100th, I will say that these were both kind of, really, really emotionally charged themes for the episode and plots. So I will give it credit for that. And I think certainly the stuff with Becky, both the not being wealthy enough to afford great presents for birthdays, and then the legacy of the generations, and being forgotten and stuff. I think both of those kind of themes within her plot are really, really relatable to a lot of people. Myself included. So for that, I really liked this episode. I don't think I got a lot of laughs from it sometimes, but I'm not sure if it was just me, but the laugh track and the studio audience sweetening, as they call it, with the laughs seemed a little bit much. It seemed we were getting, laugh lines after every single sentence. I always kind of hate that with, the multicam studio audience sitcoms, but usually in the Conjuring it's not as bad, but I was noticing it a little in this one. But look, overall, I think because of the poignant moments in this, very, very good emotional stuff. I do have to give it a pretty decent grade here. But before we do the grade, I guess I will give you my MVP of the episode. And boy, I'm going to give it to Becky. I think Lacey Goranson really, gave us that emotional feeling with the whole Mark thing, and talking about, how that is so hard for her to still talk about. I believed it. I really, when she was crying, I think Lacey Goranson has really turned into a great actress here in these last few seasons of the Connors. I think when season 10 of Roseanne started back up, look, she hadn't done a lot in the business in the last 20 years previous or whatever. And so I do think she was a little bit rocky. But I think as these seasons have gone, and certainly 100 episodes in with this iteration of the show, I think she's done great with the more emotional scenes. And so I will give the MVP of the episode to Lacey Goranson. But I will give the episode overall, what is it called? Smash and Grab and Happy Death Day. I will give it an A minus. Definitely some great emotional moments in this, some of the best we've had so far this season. All right, so I know that there are 3 more episodes coming up back to back. We've got one on April 17th, 24th, and May 1st. That's the 10th episode of the season on May 1st. I don't know where it goes from there. Are we going to get a full 13 seasons? If you know, let me know in the comments. And hopefully we do get 13 episodes, but with that writer strike, who knows? But look, because of that strike, we're getting probably another season. This was supposed to be the final season, and I think, fingers crossed, but hopefully we'll get a season 7 of this show as well. And look, it's going to go into syndication in the fall for Monday through Friday on your local stations. It just started on Netflix, I think, a week or two ago. So people are going to be discovering this show. So this could go a few more seasons, really, with renewed interest in the show and renewed popularity. So we'll see. I would love to see another 8, or get to season 8, season 9, whatever. The original Roseanne had 9 seasons. Why not this, right? All right. So thank you for watching. Dan Reviews It. We'll see you next time.